My name is Jeff Lai. Most of my games say Jonathan Jeff Lai on them, or Jonathan J. Lai. I'm part of a company called Keji. It's me and my business partner. We're out of Toronto. And we've been making toys for about 8 years. And we started making games 3 years ago. Came out of a passion that I was really starting to learn more about games, playing a lot of strategy games. And there came a point in time where I thought it would be really fun to start designing my own, and got my feet a bit wet, and now we're working on our third game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is not uncommon, but I had played Settlers of Catan at a friend's house, liked it, didn't love it like crazy, but really enjoyed it. I remember later on playing Ticket to Ride. That was probably another sort of gateway game that got me into at least light strategy games. I went to a trade show in Chicago, or a toy show in Chicago called the Chicago Toy and Game Show, and we were selling our toy at the time. But there was a lot of board games there. And specifically, there's one place selling a ton of games, and I was asking them, well, what do you recommend? They had recommended to me Power Grid, Puerto Rico, and I bought a bunch of them because they were really cheap. I think it was like $7 for Puerto Rico. And I bought a bunch of them for gifts for people, not even knowing what the game was. Before I knew it, I loved it. We were playing it like crazy. I couldn't get enough. I started buying a ton of games, started playing Agricola a lot, Dominion, and before I knew it, I had too many games to play, but I started really having a passion for games. I think on a critical basis, I really enjoy kind of deconstructing games and what I like or dislike about them, specifically more the German strategy games or Euro games. So I think when I play a game, I'm always getting a feel of what about the mechanics do I really enjoy, or what don't I like, or what parts are broken that would be fun to fix. I really enjoy games that have sort of a really beautiful aesthetic. So that's something I think as a game designer I've been trying to aim for more more recently, where can you get a game that has great mechanics but also look amazing. And sometimes it's hard to pair the two, because you see a lot of great Euro games that are so much fun to play, but for some reason the art is lacking at best. And then you have a lot of games that look beautiful but maybe aren't that great. So I've been really trying to, part of my hope as a game designer is to pair the two and find that nice balance, that nice mix. I have a friend who, since he was young, he's been sort of modifying board games. So he didn't like Monopoly, so he changed it up. He didn't like Risk, so he changed it up. And I think we just started talking about games and about design. He doesn't actually design games professionally, but that idea of can you make existing games better, or can you mix mechanics together, made me think, hey, I wonder if I could do this. So there was a children's game I played as a kid. We just called it Animal. And I sort of thought it would be kind of fun to turn this silly kids game into something maybe commercial. Or at the time I heard a bit about Kickstarter, so I thought, I wonder if I could kickstart it. And that became a game called Loudabout. There's a publisher, CSE Games, in Burlington, near where I live. And we would meet every once in a while and chat games, chat toys. We had met in Chicago, one of the trade shows. And when I showed him this game, he was very interested. And so that sort of pushed me to develop it further, to eventually kickstart it, and it was successful. And eventually that company, CSE, licensed it. So after we did Loudabout, it was very encouraging. I thought, okay, this is doable. It's not just like a pipe dream. So we immediately started working on some other games, and I'm sure this is maybe common for game designers, but then I had like 6 games in the pipeline and none of them were getting made. They were all sort of, I would notice a problem and then get frustrated and move it to the side. I don't know if that's just for me or if that's really common, but one game that I put away for about a year, it was eventually called Draconis Invasion. So I had a lot of frustrations with that game. Eventually put it to the side, didn't think anything of it. And one summer after a vacation, I got home. I saw it like in the corner of my room. It already had some artwork, and I'd made prototypes using different websites, print on demand. And I sat there on the floor and started playing it. And a lot of the problems with the game, suddenly I was thinking of solutions. Shortly after, that would have been only 3 months later, I was kickstarting it. And so that became, for me, a pretty successful Kickstarter. It was, at the time, Toronto's best board game Kickstarter of all time. And so I was really encouraged by that. And so now I'm working on another strategy game called Galactic Coliseum, which is more of a sci-fi fantasy game. You're a prisoner on a prison moon, and you're forced to fight to the death for sport. In terms of my own process, I don't think I do things the way most people do it. I really like to make things as fast as possible. I find that when I have the momentum of creating things, it can be very encouraging. So one thing that we like to do to keep the momentum going is to produce prototypes really quickly. And part of that aspect is that we have several freelance artists, designers who help us with the process so that we can have really polished prototypes quick. And that helps because I find that you can get a lot more playtests done when you're not working with prototypes that are too basic. But also it becomes encouraging as a creator because you see what you're making come to life in a way that you can almost see the end of the tunnel. So that's something that we like to do as a strategy for making things real. I've discovered recently from the last game, Draconis Invasion, that I hate writing instructions. So it was a nightmare, like creating those things. It seems like such a simple thing, like you already have basic rules, but to make a polished rule book, to take it through all the different proofreads, to make sure that it's as clear as possible, and then to get it translated, so now you gotta help edit it in German or French, was not the best time. I've met a lot of friends and maybe just strangers who ask about advice, and I always like to say that for me, and I think really for anyone, moving quickly is such a great strategy. It's very encouraging usually, as long as your costs are relatively low and if you find the right resources to make things relatively cheap. It's great because so many people, unfortunately, like have great ideas, but they work on it for a decade and then it never leaves their basement. Sometimes if you're able to move things quickly, at least you have something in your hand that you can start showing your friends, start playing, and that's part of the encouragement that makes you move quickly. Kickstarter is just an amazing platform. I think it's great because a lot of the barriers to entry for a market like board games, Kickstarter really helps. So not anyone, but I suppose a lot of people who have great ideas, have even minimal resources, can make things happen. And that's kind of cool that the board game industry has that. So this is a pretty polished prototype of Galactic Coliseum. Hopefully the final version will have miniatures, and that's part of the goal that we're trying to create. What it is you are a prisoner on the moon of Callisto, and basically all the prisoners there are forced to fight in this arena, just a blood sport arena, fight to the death. And the goal is to survive, obviously. But beyond that, the way to win is to take out as many enemies as possible. So the arena starts off in a certain section and it expands, and there's a gauntlet of different enemies that you're going through. And as you go through, there's different zones that you need to take over. And as you're taking over zones, there are different bonuses that you gain. Additionally, there's new characters always coming up as the game progresses. And right now we're using these for the prototype, but the hope is that in the future we're going to be using miniatures. So we already have some 3D modelers who are making incredible miniatures for this game. Our artists that we've worked with in the past have been amazing. So some of the art, as you can see here, is quite beautiful, and we'll be using that artwork too with the game. The game uses these components. There'll be these power gems that you collect throughout the game to power up your character and defeat enemies. So it'll have components like this to fit the whole sci-fi theme. And yeah, that's basically it. There'll be tokens that you're collecting. This is the money you gain, the bonus tokens you have. These are mercy tokens. It's something you can do if you don't want to kill a character. You can gain mercy, and that helps you get bonuses at the end of the game. Okay, so the way to win the game is that you'll be going through this gauntlet of enemies, and each time you defeat one, there is an HP value. That's how you defeat it, but there'll also be a point value. So you gain the point value, and that's the main way to collect points in the game. The other way to collect points is that there's bonuses for the most kills. There's bonuses for the most connected zones that you've defeated. There are bonuses for mercy, so you might decide not to kill an enemy and instead get mercy points, and you can get bonuses for that. So there's different angles that you can go at to win the game, and each one creates, in a way, more depth to how to win and what strategy you'll take.